Next up, he's been here before a number of times, and we're glad to have him back. I think I'm legally obliged to give a warning that this presentation might contain swear words. So I've done this now. So next up, Metcalfe.
Thank you. Hello. My name is Miles Metcalfe, and at the moment I'm kind of working with young people to get them started in IT through doing IT. It's a bit like slavery. So I'm here to talk about co-creating the future, and pay close attention to this picture because there's a clue for the next slide. So here we go. A long time ago, a very long time ago now, I was talking to the research director of a very well-known mobile phone network, and at the time I was quite excited by the possibilities of the iPhone because Apple had just announced that they had their, they were introducing their SDK, and I thought, this is great. This is going to be really fantastic for education. I had a real kind of visceral sense of potential at that moment. Call me sad, but there you go. This research director, he said, oh, no, the iPhone, it's not going anywhere. It's rubbish. It's not going anywhere. Windows CE is where it's at. I'm sort of, what the fuck? Windows CE. But I actually said, oh, that's interesting. Why Windows CE? And this was his answer. Well, Microsoft is dominant in the application market. They're licensing their OS to device makers. And it's got Exchange integration. Right, yeah, Exchange integration. I can see that's on your average teenager's shopping list, isn't it? Along with, let me think, unified communications and enterprise-grade secure application containers. I bet it's probably ITIL compliant. Okay, so why am I telling you this? I'm not telling you this to remind you that pundits like us are more often wrong than we're right. Nor am I about to lecture you on that kind of really interesting period of history where Silicon Valley went to war with incumbent communications providers. What I'm going to tell you about is what struck me as important about the iPhone. And at the time, I thought smartphones were revolutionary. I mean, I was younger then, so I tended to use more hyperbolic language. But what I thought was revolutionary about the iPhone was that it was a people's computer. It was going to be everywhere, in everybody's pocket, not just tech people using computers. It was a ubiquitous, universal computer that I knew, I had this sense, once you had a phone like that, everyone would have one. And it was already, the IT industry was already, laptops and so on and so forth. It was already changing. It had kind of moved away from this very centralized, masculine, patriarchal, call it what you will, industry where you had men in white coats whose responsibility was to share resources. They were kind of guardians of computing. And it's still something that we grapple with now. I mean, we don't have answers to this, but what it had created was the opportunity for people to use technology collaboratively, the sort of co-creation, if you like, or too many co's, the co-creation that would allow them to reinvent what was done with technology. Okay, so, oh dear, this doesn't look very good, does it? I should have chosen a lighter slide. That's a Klingon with a disruptor. I don't really want to talk a great deal about disruption. The word gets really overused, doesn't it? I mean, every conference like this, someone is going to talk about disruption. And, for me, the problem with disruption is after 30 years of it, the bloody lizards are still in charge. Okay, so, here we go. Internet-centric, innovative, disruptive. If you're a bright computer science graduate working for a Silicon Valley legend, it's probably quite comforting that the daily grind of your work, trying to get ever more people to click on a link, is disruptive. After all, you could have been a rocket scientist if only you'd anticipated the growth of the private space business. But really, disruption, all of this, it's a kind of cargo cult thing, isn't it? It's beloved of lying politicians, clueless MBAs, and drooling senior managers. the reality is that the Google model, or what you might call the Silicon Valley model, monetizing eyeballs and the kind of technological surroundings to that, is actually very similar to the development of radio and then television broadcasting in the USA. Except for one small and really often overlooked difference. That is, broadcasters pay for content. And this is the clever bit. When you're using technology, you work for them. Real wages may be declining, house prices are out of reach, but somewhere in Silicon Valley, someone is making a profit from your attention. And now you're on a 0 hours contract, you probably have more time to spend on that attention. Okay, so should you be worried? Should you be worried about this disruptive future? Yes, please do start worrying now. As productivity has risen over the last 3 decades, I mean, we all know this, I mean, this is a commonplace. As productivity has risen over the last 3 decades, real wages stagnated and declined. An ever larger proportion of the value that ordinary workers create, us lot, is captured by the elite. That lot. Government, regulation, legislation, the media, propaganda, lobbying, espionage and war all subserve that goal. Technology has played its part too, of course, in displacing and de-skilling labour. The last disruption that got the elite to part with their money, that is the end of the European empires and the rise of the American empire, was 2 world wars, numerous genocides, several brutal dictators who are now bywords for cruelty. Hitler, Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot. It cost hundreds of millions of human lives. And all of those lives bought about 30 years of greater equality in the West. Cargo cult, ITIL. All of this will add up towards the end. Isn't it funny how your ITIL certified IT department still can't get email to work? When I sent this presentation in, it came back. And isn't it funny how updating your student computers from Windows XP to Windows 7 is still stuck in change committee hell? Here's a pro tip, do make a note of this. Be ready for similar fuckwittage over security and information assurance. This is coming. But maybe it's better for you that your institution doesn't get service delivery. Service delivery, scripted, standardized, audited and automated, served up by minimum wage slaves, is applicable to an awful lot of knowledge work. Like law, general practice, and education. Chances are, though, you're either lucky enough to work in a Russell Group institution educating the elite, the sort of private banking and wealth management end of the education spectrum, or the rest of your institution's management is as incompetent as your ITIL consultant, and they couldn't deliver education as a service if their lives depended on it. The news is a little less good, I think, for school teachers, and the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership will be bringing over some corporate muscle there. So, we're back to this. You may wonder, apart from law and medical students who saddled up with debts only to find there was no lucrative profession left, except for a sliver of staunchly defended Veblen goods working for the 0.01%, apart from those losers stupid enough to be still working in a vulnerable to take over and failing FE college, what's the problem? Come the end times, when the plutocracy departs from Mars in their privately funded spacecraft, perhaps they'll take a few favourite governesses, a personal physician, or legal representative with them. And then, of course, there's coding. Coding will save jobs like giant clickstream harvesting balloons, will improve governance and public services in a rapidly urbanizing Africa. And by the way, the balloons aren't a joke. Google are building these. Okay, you know, little horror shot there. I mean, I think Bethany's doing great work. But I mean, this man, what a terrifying legacy. He is in danger of leaving. an education policy completely unfit for purpose in the 21st century. Though I guess familiarity with the works of Jane Austen can be a comfort and solace when drudging away in the Amazon warehouse overseen by drones. The bottom line is this, that a tech industry, I don't know if you read this, but I mean, you know, recently there was a big settlement, legal settlement in the US, a tech industry that conspired to suppress wages in Silicon Valley isn't keen to get everyone coding for altruistic reasons. The automated, serviceized tech industry of the future will still need low-wage, zero-hours code monkeys. Okay, so I should talk a little bit about the future of technology because this conference is about the future of technology. And the future is wearable. Probably not this, though. I mean, something that makes you look like a knobhead and want to throw up is probably a long way from the mainstream, niche uses in education notwithstanding. And what about this? I don't see unbridled demand for Google watching you pee. Each to his own. The Apple Watch, it's vaporware today, of course, and definitely a niche in the short term. But there's something interesting about it if it does catch on. And the interesting thing is Apple's positioning, this thing about fashion and technology. You know, and anyone who's worked on a VLE project knows that fashion and technology is a really interesting kind of nexus. But the thing about fashion is that innovation in the fashion industry is in production, marketing, and distribution. The technology, the suit, the dress, you know, it's been done. And Beats is a good example because, you know, headphones, nothing innovative about headphones. Beats is all about flogging headphones to stupid people who don't like music. And then there's this, you know, the Apple edition. China may have a huge appetite for conspicuous consumption. I mean, you know, you should sort of see, in fact, go to China and see people buying Louis Vuitton bags and so on and so forth. And the market power is there. That's why your iPhone screen is getting bigger. But still, you know, this is an heirloom-grade fashion accessory that needs to be updated every year. I mean, I'm interested to see how this plays out. You never know, you know, maybe in a couple of years' time, we'll be banning watches in classrooms. I want to kind of end on telling you a secret about service delivery. And really, there are two things. There's service delivery, and there is casework. And not grasping that there are two things is one of the reasons why your IT department stuffed up that ITIL implementation. Truly inefficient services deliver everything as casework. And those kind of soul-crushing helplines that you have to deal with, they try and deliver casework as services. And the secret is this. By its very nature, tech can't automate out the skilled human element of casework. It can only support it, at least just yet. I'll finish on a quote from Abraham Lincoln. This is quoted by various other people at tech conferences. We always end up with quotes, don't we? The best way to predict your future is to create it. I kind of have pointed a gloomy picture, but I think, to go back to where I started, that the power to change that future sits in your lap, in your hands. And, you know, we can shape it. Some awareness, I guess, that, you know, this whole, it's the internet, it's different. Some awareness that that isn't really entirely true, that we are still people, and life is still messy, and there are still economic and political concerns driving business innovation. Being mindful of that and making sure that our students are mindful of it, then perhaps we can build a better future. Thank you.